You know, I don't see that as a either or choice. If you look at the history of the world, countries have not grown by saying, I'll grow at home and I'll have nothing to do with abroad because it's a waste of my resources or it's a subtraction of my resources and energy from home. In fact, countries have grown by growing at home, then engaging abroad, leveraging the international environment, in a way contributing to it, gaining from it, and to me, being, see, when we again use this word so sometimes so casually, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, what is actually the messaging of that word, of that term? The term is that we have never considered the world as an inimical or a hostile environment from which we have to defensively protect ourselves. Now, yes, we have limitations on our resources, less than we had, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But nevertheless, we do. Now, if you are in a problem-solving mode, with limited resources, how do you have maximum impact? That is actually the problem which has to be solved. And what we try to do in Indian foreign policy today, in Indian diplomacy today, is actually solve that problem. And we try to do that by partly using our competitiveness, using our strengths, leveraging other institutions and possibilities. I'll give you an example. I would say, even to me, an IIT Madras campus in Tanzania is a way by which Indian foreign policy has leveraged the capabilities of an institution here to make a huge impact there. That is something I want to talk about. But I would, make this statement. In my entire career, which is quite long, I have never seen anything having a greater emotional impact on the rest of the world than giving vaccines. I've actually had people who tear up when they remember the first vaccine shipment. So, if you remember, look, COVID was a bad memory, we have put it all behind us. You try to actually get it out as much of your system as possible. But at that time, there were countries, there were developed countries, Western countries, some of them, who had stocked up 8 times the number of vaccines of their population. Nobody is going to take 8 doses, okay? But there were countries, and big countries, who had 8 times the vaccine stock of their population, and next to them were small countries to whom they were not willing to give 10,000 doses. Okay. Now, when you had somebody who themselves, who had first of all responsibility of 1.4 billion, and then on top of it was who had initiated the program, we were still in the middle of it, and we felt at that time that many of these countries should not, giving them 100,000, 200,000 doses was something which would be a gesture of solidarity. It would be make or break for them. And it was something we could do, and we could explain to our people why we could do it. And I can tell you, it is something even today. Today we talk less about vaccines. I hear it actually when I go out. When I go to Latin America, when I go to small island states, people from the Caribbean, people from the Pacific, many of them say, look, we had no chance of getting within smelling distance of vaccine but for the fact that you people gave it to us. So I mentioned that as an example that, we were the world's most efficient producers of vaccines. The same if you look, at that time, my second job was in a way a sort of a supply chain and oversight minister for some of this, because a lot of the supply chain was actually outside the country. And again, people don't realize it was very important to have that global connect and that global responsibility, because the world also helped us. I think that's something we should acknowledge, that the supply chain came from outside India so that the product could be made in India, and we had a moral obligation. Not all countries at that time necessarily fulfilled it. So the bottom line I would say is, don't think of it as home and abroad, why am I doing this for the world when I still have problems at home. We have to, steady up at home, we'll build up at home, but at the same time, you don't not do foreign policy because you got domestic problems. They've got to walk hand in hand. You have to do both at that time. And the example I gave of IIT Madras, I had the privilege of going to Zanzibar, of seeing the opening of that institution. But I was just thinking to myself at that time, and again today when I came, think 10 years from now. Think 10 years from now, how many students of Africa would have passed through its portals? Look at the impact that we would have on the minds of people who in their own countries would be economic and technology leaders. It's an investment beyond value. You will shape, and remember, some, decades ago, others used to do it. If you look at the way I'm giving you as an example, how American universities shape the image of America abroad. So today, I would say education for us, particularly higher education, and skills. I would take it beyond education to innovation, to talent promotion, nurturing. This is an area which I feel at the end of the day, there are oil powers, there are resource powers. We are a human resource power, and we should play to our strengths. We now have the capability to start doing so. When institutions of excellence in the country start going abroad, believe me, in the business of foreign policy, I now just have a huge addition to my arsenal. And what I see 10 years from now in Africa, from this one institution, is something very, very transformational.